has femininity gone? It's a question that sounds almost dangerous to ask in today's world. Once, the idea of femininity carried with it softness, elegance, and mystery, qualities that men not only admired, but often found themselves orbiting around like a planet pulled by gravity. Yet today, that very word, femininity, feels like it has slipped out of fashion, replaced with something harder, sharper, and far less forgiving. The 20th century philosopher Simone de Beauvoir wrote that one is not born, but rather becomes, a woman. By that, she meant that femininity was always a kind of performance, a script written by culture and imposed upon women. But what happens when the script is torn up and no one is quite sure what role is left to play? We live in an age where women are celebrated most when they act with traits that were once considered masculine: assertiveness, independence, competitiveness, and unyielding self-sufficiency. To doubt this is to simply glance at our films, advertisements, or social media feeds. The feminine archetype of grace and tenderness has been replaced by the strong, independent woman, who, we are told, needs no one. Nietzsche warned us long ago, man is the cruelest animal. And in the struggle of modern society, women too have been forced to armor themselves, to adopt a harder shell. Not because they wanted to, but because the world demanded it of them. But in this transformation, something precious has been lost. The yin has been eclipsed by the yang, the rose by the steel. Carl Jung once wrote that the psyche contains both the anima and the animus, the feminine within man, the masculine within woman. The balance of these energies, he believed, was essential to wholeness. Yet what happens when culture demands that one side dominates and the other is ridiculed or dismissed? We don't get balance, we get distortion. And the distortion is everywhere. Walk into a workplace and you will find women trained to compete ruthlessly, rewarded for toughness, but punished for softness. Watch the latest drama on Netflix, and you'll see heroines written as stoic warriors rather than nurturers or muses. Even in dating, femininity has become almost a liability, mocked as weakness or dismissed as traditional. But here's the truth no one dares to say. The disappearance of femininity isn't just a crisis for women. It's a crisis for men, for relationships, and for society itself. Think about it. Attraction itself is built on polarity. The French psychoanalyst Jacques Lacan argued that desire always arises out of difference, not similarity. Masculinity and femininity are like two magnetic poles. They pull each other because they are not the same. Remove the difference, and the spark fizzles. Yet in the modern world, that polarity is dissolving. Women are encouraged to mirror men, to pursue the same ambitions, to embody the same traits, to live the same lives. And what is the result? We don't get harmony, we get sameness. And sameness, however fair it may sound on paper, is the death of desire. Schopenhauer once remarked that love itself is a trick of nature, a way to continue the species by drawing opposites together. When men lose their masculinity and women lose their femininity, the mechanism breaks down. And when it breaks down, loneliness rises. We see it everywhere, in the record levels of single adults, in the silent epidemic of people struggling to form lasting connections. But it's not just about romance. Femininity once represented a way of being in the world, a softness, a receptivity, a capacity to nurture and to soothe. When a woman brought femininity into a room, the air shifted. There was calm where there had been tension, warmth where there had been coldness. The Stoic philosopher Epictetus said, "No great thing is created suddenly." The same is true of femininity. It was not simply fashion, but a cultivated art, passed from mothers to daughters, preserved in rituals, celebrated in poetry. It gave women a kind of power that was not force, but influence, not dominance, but depth. Today, that art is endangered. Women are told to be everything but feminine. Be ambitious, be competitive, be dominant, be relentless. But do not be soft, do not be gentle, do not lean into grace, because grace has been rebranded as weakness. And here lies the paradox. Women are applauded for strength, yet privately exhausted by the weight of carrying both masculine and feminine roles. Men, on the other hand, find themselves confused, yearning for the feminine energy that once balanced them, but rarely finding it in a world that teaches women to scorn it. This is why conversations about the death of femininity strike such a nerve, because deep down, everyone feels it. Men feel the loss when they look for softness and find only armor. Women feel the loss when they look in the mirror and see strength, but no longer feel beauty. Society feels the loss when polarity collapses into monotony, when everything sharp becomes blunt and everything unique becomes uniform. And yet, the question remains, is femininity truly disappearing, or is it only being forced underground, waiting for its moment of revival? To answer whether femininity is truly disappearing, we must look deeper into the forces that shape it. Psychology teaches us that human behavior is never only personal. It is molded by environment, culture, and necessity. Erich Fromm, the humanist psychoanalyst, once said, "Man always dies before he is fully born." What he meant was that society often stifles our full nature, and today, women's femininity is being stifled, not by men, but by the very culture that claims to liberate them. Think of the modern workplace. It does not reward gentleness. It does not reward empathy. It does not reward nurturing. Instead, it rewards assertiveness, speed, competition, and the ability to treat relationships as transactional. These are masculine-coded traits. Women who enter this arena are forced to adopt them, or else fall behind. And so, they learn to armor themselves, to negotiate like warriors, to present themselves with steel rather than silk. It is not that femininity is gone, it is that femininity cannot survive in an environment designed against it. Friedrich Nietzsche warned us about this dynamic in a striking way. He said, "He who fights with monsters should see to it that he himself doesn't become a monster." Women, in fighting against the structures that once confined them, risk becoming shaped by the very hardness they sought to resist. In their victory, they may have lost something more subtle, something harder to name but easier to feel: the aura of femininity. But here is the irony. While the world celebrates masculine traits in women, it secretly hungers for the feminine. Men search for it in relationships. Children crave it in their mothers. Even women themselves often confess, in private, a longing to feel feminine again, to dress with elegance, to rest in softness, to be adored not for how hard they fight, but for how deeply they shine. Yet the culture tells them, that is weakness, that is outdated, that is submission. Carl Jung described the anima, the feminine archetype within men, as a guide to the soul. It represented warmth, receptivity, intuition, a force that helped men access creativity and meaning. But if femininity vanishes in women, where will men encounter it? Where will they be reminded of the softer side of existence? Without the mirror of femininity, the masculine collapses inward, becoming harsh, rigid, or despairing. And so, society drifts into imbalance. Women carry the weight of both roles, men feel displaced, and relationships lose the polarity that once gave them fire. We now live in a time where women say, "I don't need a man," and men say, "I'd rather not risk needing a woman." The bond between them frays, not because nature has changed, but because culture has. Yet, buried beneath the noise, the feminine whispers still exist. You see it in the woman who, despite her career armor, still feels joy in nurturing a child or decorating a home with beauty. You see it in the quiet strength of a woman who listens without judgment, who softens the room with her presence. These glimpses remind us, femininity is not dead, it is exiled, and an exile can always return. The question is, will we welcome it back, or will we continue to deny its place until its absence becomes unbearable? The costs of this exile are already visible, though few are willing to name them. When femininity vanishes, relationships become transactional. The dance between man and woman turns into a negotiation between two competitors, each calculating what they will gain and what they might lose. Love, which once thrived on mystery and polarity, now feels like a business contract, and business contracts rarely set the soul on fire. Psychologist Viktor Frankl, in Man's Search for Meaning, argued that human beings are not driven by pleasure or power alone, but by meaning. Yet meaning is not found in sameness. It is born in contrast, in the weaving together of differences. Masculinity without femininity is like a sentence without poetry. It may communicate, but it does not inspire. Look around modern society, and you will see what happens when femininity erodes. Marriage rates fall, birth rates decline, dating becomes a battlefield of suspicion, ghosting, and mistrust. Women, exhausted by the demand to be everything, both providers and nurturers, burn out. Men, confused by the shifting rules, retreat into isolation or numbing distractions. Both sides ache with loneliness, but the old bridge between them has collapsed. The sociologist Zygmunt Bauman described our age as one of liquid love, relationships that are fluid, unstable, endlessly dissolving. Without femininity, this liquid becomes corrosive. It eats away at trust, at loyalty, at the tenderness that once anchored intimacy. What is left is a hollow performance, people playing the roles of lovers while secretly wondering why the spark is gone. And perhaps the greatest tragedy is that femininity was never weakness. It was strength of a different kind. It was the strength to endure, to heal, to create beauty in the midst of chaos. Lao Tzu, the ancient Chinese philosopher, wrote, "The softest thing in the universe overcomes the hardest." Femininity was that softness, the flowing river that shapes stone, the quiet persistence that outlasts brute force. Perhaps we, in our time, owe it to the generations before us to keep femininity alive, not as a costume of the past, but as a flame carried forward, that the dance of life was never meant to be a competition of equals, but a harmony of opposites, masculine and feminine, strength and softness, sun and moon, each incomplete without the other. Nietzsche warned that when a culture destroys its myths, it destroys itself. And the myth of femininity was not mere illusion. It was structure, archetype, rhythm. It was the silent agreement between man and woman that allowed civilization to continue. In mocking it, we have mocked ourselves.
For those who want to support me and Hollowise, memberships are now open. You'll get early access, priority replies, and your name recognized among the inner circle.
Your support keeps this channel alive.